Hey there, YouTube, it's your brother out here with another reaction video. Today we got The Legend of Artorias, the Abysswalker by Vati. Let's get right into it, shall we? Hit it.
In Age of Fire, there were 4 knights who distinguished themselves above all others. First, there was Hawkeye Goth, who fought in the First War against the dragons. He exulted in the thrill of the hunt, plucking dragons out of the sky with his enormous greatbow.
Damn!
Soon, the only dragons left were in his memories, which he revisited endlessly.
Oh, okay.
Fighting on the ground was Ornstein, the dragon slayer. He wielded a long, lightning cross spear that could be stamped deep into a stone dragon's hide. Its curious design went on to remind many of an exiled god of war, though none of them dared to speak his name.
Are we just gonna gloss over the fact you just said that, or...? Okay.
And then there was Kiran, whose talents
Assassin.
differed considerably from the previous two. A stealthy assassin, she would have been no match for dragons, and so she must have killed for Gwyn in the Age of Fire to follow. She dazzled her foes with streaks of gold
Like a ballet kind of thing.
and then stung with the vicious poison of her silver tracer. But in the Age of Man to come, none were as well equipped as the great knight Artorias.
Right? Yeah.
For nothing, not dragons, nor disunity, nor even his enemies frightened Gwyn like the dark. The dark soul of man filled the Lord of Light with fear, for one day, Gwyn knew, the fire would fade and humanity would inherit the world.
It's such a fascinating concept as well. It's like when you see Dark Souls and you don't know what the meaning is, and you get the idea it's the dark soul of man in the Age of Fire of the gods, which is you know, it really teeters on the edge of like there is so much to the game with such cool lore, and they choose to ignore it. Like they build this intrinsic, really gritty world, and you need to go and find bits and pieces from different places, like descriptions, like dialogue from different NPCs, and then you have to build it yourself. It's not a plot that's given to you, and it's a bit disheartening because I get it. It's for more hardcore fans, but it should be more well known, bro. These stories are incredible.
His world.
Right.
So while he still had time and power, Gwyn began to rig the world in his favor. Mankind had stood amongst those who set out to slay the ancient dragons, and, as if in thanks, Gwyn bestowed upon pygmies and men the Ringed City, an enormous, gilded city located at World's End. The walls were as tall as mountains, and above them soared Medir, an immortal archdragon that was raised by the gods.
I'm just gonna gloss over. Yes, the immortal archdragon that just happens to just patrol the city.
Below,
Yeah, it's more of a prison than anything else. I don't really...
Gwyn's youngest daughter, the Princess Filianor, a woman of enormous faith and power, who Gwyn gave up to protect the pygmies until the very end of the world. And at first glance, you might think these acts benevolent, you might think they were kind, but in the end, it was just a trick of the light. The walls were not for protection. The dragon had an eternal duty to battle the dark, and Gwyn's daughter, Filianor, would never see her father again. The purpose of the Ringed City was not to protect the holders of the original Dark Soul, it was to imprison them, like a ring of fire that encircles the darkness of humanity. And man was, in fact, branded with this very seal, the Dark Sign. And despite clear evidence of their heroism in the war against the dragons, their Dark Knights never were lauded for their service. So it's no wonder, then, that in all of the spellcraft and the hexes that stem from humanity, one thing remains constant. It craves a free will of its own, and it writhes against its shackles. Perhaps the first example of this was the Mad King. He was pygmy royalty, and he rebelled against the light. We have no idea what crimes he committed, but they must have been terrible, for he was put to death by Shira, a knight of Filianor. Only the Mad King would not die, and Shira, with the Mad King impossibly entwined around her spear, had no choice but to hold him quietly in a dark room until the end of time. There were, of course, other humans.
Bro, do you not understand how cool that sentence was? Like, stabbed the pygmy royal evil king, and he just won't die. So I'm going to hold him till the end of time. But this story is something else, man. Bro, this story is
Human cities outside of the Ringed City. One such example was the Dark City of New Londo, which was governed by 4 human kings and protected by Knights of the Dark Blade.
Yeah, they're fragments of a soul in them, right?
The kings were renowned for their foresight, and they even had fragments of Gwyn's very own soul bestowed upon them. So that they could better govern their people. Of course, this too was another trick of the light, for what lies at the top of New Londo but Filing Shrine, a place of undead sacrifice to Gwyn's Age of Fire. So no human city was permitted to flourish without a clear benefit to the Age of Fire.
Interesting.
And there was no better example of this than another human city called Ulasil, which was the golden land of light sorceries. Light, it turns out, can be manipulated to foster illusions. It can hide your intentions, it can even mess with the fabric of time. And spells of this nature would be of great value to the gods in the coming years, so Ulasil flourished, an exemplary city for Gwyn's pantheon, because it was proof that humanity could be taught to serve their interests. And so it was that a group of missionaries from Ulasil embarked upon the Ringed City, perhaps to preach and reinforce the power.
Do you like to hear about our Lord and Savior Gwyn?
Of the light in this dark city.
Just imagine them
One of these
knocking on the doors.
missionaries was called Half-Light, and he was a talented individual who was wielding the powerful artifacts of his homeland. He would go on to earn the favor of Filianor, and he would even earn the legendary dragon weapon of Medir. So it was no surprise that Half-Light elected to stay behind, becoming the last recorded spear of the church. And just as Half-Light visited the Ringed City and even stayed behind, the reverse was also true of a certain pygmy from the Ringed City. This pygmy's name was Manus. And while we know nothing about the nature of his visit to Ulasil, we do know one thing. He died there, and the body of primeval man, of Manus, was put to rest far, far beneath the...
Isn't Manus the thing we beat in the abyss?
city itself, out of the light and out of mind. We don't know much about Manus, and a lot is left to the imagination. What we do know is that he was a pygmy far from home. He was a part of a race that Gwyn was doing everything in his power to suppress, and when you think on Manus's fate, it's kind of hard to imagine that Gwyn didn't have a hand in it, especially since Gwyn had an order of assassins, the Lord's Blades, in his employ. The leader of the Lord's Blades was Kidan, the Hornet. It stated that she laid waste to Gwyn's enemies, and of course, there's no proof that the Lord's Blades actually killed Manus, but you could also argue that that's rather the point of assassin.
Okay, so the whole way of saying that she could have killed him is by stating the fact that, well, we don't know if she did, so she could have. Fair play,
isn't it? Whatever the case, the tide was turning. Mankind was struggling against the world order, and even New Londo, which was once a haven for undead, had turned into a hideous spawning ground for the Abyss and its dark wraiths.
Right.
At the heart of this uprising was a serpent named Karth, who swayed the four kings and taught its undead knights how to pillage back their humanity.
Ugh.
Some descriptions even say the dark wraiths became the most human of all, but to others,
the dark wraiths are the enemies of man and any living thing that has a soul.
So as the Age of Man
Isn't that a bit disheartening and disconcerting, but okay.
crept ever closer, yet another Knight of Gwyn appeared, perfectly equipped to face it, the great Knight Artorias.
Right, so we know how you fight Artorias, and I think you'd imagine that if you had all the knights at your disposal apart from him, you'd send him to deal with the Abyss. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, you would have.
With a great sword weighted to strike harder against servants of the dark, a great wolf who
Sith.
defined their fighting style,
Right.
and a covenant with the beasts of the Abyss, Knight Artorias and Sif defiantly faced the worst of mankind. Yet, in the end, the terror that was the Dark Wraiths could only be stifled with the sacrifice of their entire city. Such was the power of their 4 kings and the resilience of their abyss.
Oof.
Luckily for Gwyn, such a safety measure had been put in place years ago, and so the sealers of New Londo watched stoically as water rushed into the city and thousands of innocents died by their hand.
The entire
It's
city.
such an interesting story because you can actually see it playing out like this, and it would be very reasonable that just have a safety measure in place just in case this happens. God damn.
He was sacrificed to contain them. For that,
Because they're that much of a threat. It makes sense. It's just not this city you're threatening. It's the whole world. Yeah.
it is how great a threat they
Right.
were.
Right. Okay.
But while Gwyn did manage to put the New Londo threat on hold, no one was prepared for the outbreak in Ulasil. I imagine when they figured out that
Right, because Ulasil being like the prestigious city, it just doesn't make sense that why they would have, unless
primeval human was buried beneath their very city,
right.
the temptation must have been too great to resist.
Right.
Believe it or not, Ulasil has brought the abyss upon itself, fooled by that toothy serpent.
They dug up Manus.
They upturned the grave of primeval man and incited his ornery wrath. What could they have been thinking?
Yeah.
Like the mad pygmy king before him, Manus rejected death, and he was as far from peace as could be.
I
The
imagine.
raw emotion of humanity that we mentioned earlier billowed outwards, corrupting the townsfolk of Ulasil, and Manus became the father of an unstoppable dark abyss. Curiously, though, it's almost as if he was searching for something, using his power to reach across time and space until he found it. Instead, he found Dusk, Princess of Ulasil.
I still think on that creature from the abyss that preyed upon me. My faculties were far from lucid, but I quite clearly sensed certain emotions. A wrenching nostalgia.
That's interesting. So it's as though he was. So it's not. So yeah, I get it. You would bring the argument that it is like an undead pygmy that you kind of just dug up, and he's just going and doing his own thing. But it's interesting to think from her perspective that he did capture me, but he didn't kill you or anything else like that. He just wanted you near him. So that doesn't seem like a like a evil being kind of. He must have been searching for something.
A lost joy. An object of obsession. And a sincere hope to reclaim it. Could these thoughts belong to the beast from the abyss? But if that were true, then perhaps it is no beast after all.
Facts. It's right. It's because I don't think he was just angry at the fact they dug him up. He's just really looking for something.
The object of his obsession was a pendant, and with it in our possession, we're pulled back to a time where all appears lost.
Oh.
Well, look at this one. From what faraway age hast thou come? Thy scent is very human indeed, but not intolerable. I am Elizabeth, guardian of this sanctuary.
Just gonna also gloss over. I didn't know this, but we have a giant fungus named Elizabeth? Okay. Alright.
Thou shalt see
I like
further
how
on.
I like how the entire story, this is just the most throwaway bit, as like a character just appears once, but it's also just like, are we not gonna question it? Okay, alright.
An abyss was begat of the ancient beast, and threatens to swallow the whole of Ulasil.
The city is lost, the abyss is spreading, and mankind has succumbed to the worst parts of their nature.
I just realized where this is going, which is with, well, clearly if you have an unstoppable void abyss, you're going to send Artorias into it. And since we fight Artorias, the only logical conclusion is he didn't win that fight. But then that doesn't make sense. Wait, he would have gone in with Sif. Wouldn't the wolf also would have died there?
When Gwyn heard of Manus and his abyss, Artorias must have been the first one
Right,
sent
right,
to deal
yeah.
with the threat.
And he didn't
He
win.
was, after all, the best
He did
equipped.
not win.
But fighting Dark Wraiths is considerably different to the power of primeval man.
Oh, Sif
So
was
what-
there. Okay, so Sif was there in that fight.
Artorias was bested
Yeah.
and was forced to retreat. Beset by the abyss, the The final act of Artorias was to protect his companion. He shielded Sif with the divine power of his great shield. After all, his arm was broken, and he could no longer bear the burden. Then, Artorias himself was...
This is true. This is true. I just remember the fight. Yes, that's true. If you remember okay, why am I talking this? Like, in the fight, you would see that he's not fighting with his main arm. Like, one of his arms is broken. I don't know if it's both, but you can see one limply hanging on.
Overcome.
All of you, forgive me, for I have availed you nothing.
Damn.
Knight Artorias came to stop this, but such a hero has nary a murmur of dark. Without doubt he will be swallowed by the abyss,
Right.
overcome by its utter blackness. Indeed, the abyss may be unstoppable.
Which is also interesting because we're the one who beat him, right?
lost. And yet, strangely, soon after the spread of the abyss was actually halted, and Princess Dusk of Ulasil miraculously wandered out of the abyss. Artorias' name henceforth passed into legend, the knight who gave his life to disperse the abyss to...
Oh. That can't be right, though. That can't be right, because we beat Artorias, and we beat Manus. So we saved the princess. Am I thinking about this wrong? No, I'm pretty sure I'm right.
rescued the Princess of Ulasil. This is a lie, of course. In reality, it is we who rescued the princess,
it's us.
and we fulfilled the legacy of Artorias.
Right. The whole point of the game was beating both the bosses. We beat him and we beat Artorias. So, huh?
This may strike thine ear as somewhat peculiar, but long ago, in my homeland of Ulasil, I was beset by a creature from the abyss. I would have perished then, were it not for the great knight Artorias. In truth, I saw little of what transpired, for mine senses were already fled, but even still, there was something about Artorias, a certain balance of the humors that quite perfectly fits your semblance.
Oh.
Heavens, could it be that?
I didn't know that was a voice line, but if that is the case, bro, that is insane. So even she realizes, comes to the same conclusion that's, wait, you really resemble the person who might have killed him. Wait a minute.
With this, Manus' suffering has ended. But Manus wasn't the only corruption of the abyss that we killed in Ulasil.
Yeah.
There was also Artorias. The legend of Artorias is a lie. He did not vanquish the father of the abyss. He did not eliminate the dark wraiths of New Londo. The abyss is unstoppable, and yet, eons later, the legend of Artorias would inspire a legion of Abyss Watchers who continue to rage against the dying of the light. Yes, the abyss is unstoppable, but they fight nonetheless. Even in this state, notice that Artorias continues to seek out and kill.
It's such a powerful concept of I get it, it's a storytelling device, and I get it, it's kind of like a plot point, I get it. But it's so fascinating as an idea, though. It's like, you know as the player, you kill both of them, and the world remembers Artorias for doing it. And the very idea and his legend inspires the Abysswalkers later on. So it can be that even with you being there, with you doing what you did, it's not you who's going to be remembered. It's Artorias. He's the knight who went and vanquished the void, who gave hope that the abyss can be stopped, and hence the Abyss Watchers. Abysswalkers, I think. But either way, but it's very weird of kind of an experience, because you know bits and pieces of what happens, and now that you have the complete picture in front of you, it makes so much sense. But it's also frustrating that it's not just given to you in the main game, because it's such an incredible story. Almost, I think every Souls game has an incredible story.
Of humanity. He's still in there somewhere, but his legend can only live on with his death.
Oh, that's so beautifully said. Oh, I get it. It's just words, but the meaning behind them, it's like, like his legend can only live on with his death. It's only when he dies and the secret dies with you and with him that the world just remembers the legend, and then that's it. Damn, man.
Only his fellow knights knew the truth, that they would take his soul and his secret to the grave.
That's tough.
And while Artorias' soul was corrupted by the worst of humanity, it was the best of humanity that redeemed it. And the hero of Ulasil would disappear without a trace, almost as if he didn't belong. For in reality, he didn't.
That's tough. As a character, you're not supposed to
And
even be
eons
there.
later, deep within an enchanted wood, behind 2 locked doors and a troop of forest protectors, an ancient cat speaks the truth.
She doesn't want you to know.
The legend
Yeah.
of Artorias art none but a fabrication. Traversing the dark, 'tis but a fairy tale.
Alvina is keen to downplay the legend of Artorias because heroes and bandits have begun seeking out his grave. They would desecrate his legacy for the secret of Abysswalking,
Fucking
and they
hell.
may do harm to Sif, who, in fact, Alvina helped you rescue back when the world was still
Bro, that's
young.
more depressing knowing that he's watching over his
Imagine
dead.
when you cross paths again years
Bro, this
later.
is- yeah, it's
you're
so
duty bound
screwed
to
up
seek
though.
the abyss,
God damn it, like
and Sif is duty bound to stop you.
it's insane because man, it really hits hard because you have to fight Sif.
One of you will have to die, because Sif cannot give you the covenant of Artorias willingly. Maybe, in death, he can find his friend Artorias again.
It's fucked up, man, because you're fighting like the wolf that is protecting his dead friend's grave, and then you have to kill him. Bro, I mean, you could not describe a sadder story, bro. Like Artorias is one thing, but you kill his dog who's like his buddy who's trying to protect him, bro. That's just not. That's just dark, man. Yeah, then again, it is Dark Souls, so. Fucking hell, man. Damn.
Before I go,
This is
I
an
just want to
insane-
say a
this-
couple more things.
like,
Firstly,
this is an insane
was
video, by
made
the way.
Far, far better by the contributions of a guy of the video. Shout out somebody else's channel.
I think my battery's about to die. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like, comment, and subscribe. I'll catch you beautiful bastards in the next one. Peace. And check out Body Video, man. Links in the description down below. Catch you beautiful bastards later. Take care. Peace. Nice.